Okay, so we are going to get started with the second presentation, Java Utility Class. Can you see the slide? Okay, good. All right. So let's move on. So Java Utility Classes. Here we are going to explore some the classes that belong to Java.util package. So we're going to actually spend most of our time learning date and calendar classes, and at the end we are going to see properties class, which we have seen in previous presentation as well. So let's talk about date class first. By the way, if you see date class in Java doc, you will notice a lot of methods. Actually, most methods of date class have been deprecated from JDK 1.1. What do I mean by deprecation? Deprecation means is the methods are recommended to be not used because in the future it will not be supported. Okay, so that's a deprecation. Now, date class is still being used, and we'll talk about where and when you want to use a date class. Okay, so let's talk about the date class first. So there are couple of methods, actually few methods that are not deprecated, like a get time and set time, and you provide, in the case of set time, you're going to provide long value. Okay, and of course you can create a date class object by calling constructor method date, and you can also specify the long value. So data object represent specific instant in time with a millisecond precision from 1970 this GMT. Okay, so this long value is basically a long value from this Greenwich Mean Time, 1970 Greenwich Mean Time. Okay, now because it's just a long value, you can think of a data object as a compact form of maintaining date and time value. So as we will see later on, there is another class called the calendar class. Calendar class is a lot bigger than date class. Date internally, data object is basically 4 byte representing this time. Okay, so date class doesn't also maintain time zone and locale information. It doesn't have any information about time zone and locale. It's just the 4 byte long value from this time. Okay, so you can see data object is quite efficient. So when do you want to use a date class versus the calendar class? So you want to use it when you need to pass timestamp data around. It's a lot more efficient way of passing around timestamp. So you will see later on calendar object is huge. It's in fact the many times bigger than date object. So you're going to actually create calendar object from the data object if you need to display things based on time zone and locale and things like that. But if you need to pass around a timestamp, then that's the time you want date object. Okay, so you see the value of date class. Okay, so I'm going to just move ahead. Alright, so let's move on to calendar class and Gregorian calendar class. So what is a calendar class? Calendar class is an abstract class converting a moment in time. So it's typically receiving data object as a constructor parameter, and it does have a set of integer fields such as year, month, day, and hour, and things like that. Now, because it's an abstract class, we haven't talked about the concept of abstract class yet, but you can think of abstract class is a class, it's a parent class in which you have a set of methods, and those set of methods need to be implemented. Those are by the subclasses. Okay, so subclass of calendar interpret the timestamp of date object according to the rules of specific calendar system. So the subclass of calendar abstract base class is the one that actually understands the locale and things like that. Okay, so in fact JDK comes with one concrete subclass of calendar class, which is called the Gregorian Calendar. Okay, so Gregorian Calendar class converts moment in time, meaning it will receive a data object, which is a 4-byte value from the 1970 GMT to a particular year, month, date, and hour, and minute, and second, considering time zone as well as daylight saving information, and even the when all the Julian calendars switch the Gregorian calendar. So all these things are in fact considered when it's trying to come up with year, month, date, and hour, minute, and things like that. Okay, so we'll see the hands-on lab, and we'll have a better understanding of this one. Okay. Let's see. So this is actually important. So it contains Gregorian calendar. So for that matter, any calendar object, it contains a lot of information. So make it a lot larger, tens of times the larger than data object. So you do not pass around calendar object around. Instead, you want to pass around data object. And when you need to display things like hour and date, considering a locale and the time zone, you create a calendar object from the date object. So if you need to calculate the year, month, and day, these fields of another calendar, then you're going to have a different implementation of this calendar abstract base class. So there are other implementations. These are not coming with a JDK. However, these implementations are available. Chinese calendar, probably lunar calendar based, Hebrew calendar, and Islamic calendar, and things like that. So how you create a calendar object? So you are going to call get instance. Again, this is a static method of calendar class, right? And then you get the calendar object. And then calendar object can produce all the time field values like hour and year and month and things like that. Okay, implementing date time formatting of a particular language and calendar system. So calendar object understood locale as well as time zone. Okay, so SimpleDateFormat class. So SimpleDateFormat class is a concrete class for formatting, and internally it's actually using calendar class for date conversions. Okay, so if you see the source code of SimpleDateFormat, you can see it is actually starting from it's actually converting to a base calendar class object. Okay, so that is date and calendar class. Now properties class is something that we have seen in previous presentation. So basically representing persistent set of properties in the form of key value pair. Okay, so the properties can be saved to a stream or loaded from a stream, typically in a form of a file. And so key value pairs. So let's see. So here we are reading my properties, the text file that contains a key value pair, and we have a properties object from we actually create a properties object reading the system properties, and then we actually loading that particular file to the properties as well. Okay, and we can set the properties and you can get the list of properties. So this is the same code that we have seen in previous hands-on lab. Alright, so let's take a look at the hands-on lab. Okay, so this hands-on lab will actually give you a better idea in terms of how date class and calendar classes are being used together. So exercise 1 is about date class. So when you run this application, this is the format of displaying the long value, and this is you're basically displaying the in the form of a string. Okay, so let's take a look at the code. So we are going to create data object. So when you create a data object, it will actually return the number of milliseconds, meaning the 4 byte, since January 1st, 1970 GMT. Okay, so I'm just displaying that long value. That's the first output over here. This guy, oops, this one. Okay. Now, when you are printing that out, oh, here we go. I'm actually looking at the second one. When you call the toString method of data object, internally it will create calendar object and then display in the format like this. Okay, so that's the reason the output is like this. So when you create a calendar object, it's going to use a default locale time zone and the locale of my system. Okay, so depending on where you are actually running this particular code, it might actually give you a different well, in this case it's going to be, say, EST, but if you are running this one in California, then it will say 3 hours later than this one, and it will say PST, something like that. So toString method calling against the data object is performing the conversion to the calendar object. Okay, so here you can so this is another usage of data object. So when you have to compute elapsed time, okay, it's better to have it in the form of data object. So we are computing between the two long object. Okay, moving forward, calendar and Gregorian calendar class. So here I'm displaying the contents of Gregorian calendar object. So you can see it has a lot of fields, including time zone field. Okay, so the calendar object is huge compared to the data object. Okay, so let's see the code. So here you can get the current calendar object by calling getInstance method. Again, this is a static method of calendar class, and then you get the calendar object. Okay, and then you are going to call getToString method on the calendar object, and you can see current date and time. So in this case, it's just displaying the contents of calendar object. Okay, so that's what you are seeing here. Okay, and then we can print out the month and long and those fields. Okay, so these are the you're basically the invoking hour of the day, day of the month, and the day of the year, and things like that. Okay, so you can see Java documentation of calendar class. So you can see these are all the static int. Okay, it's a field, static field. Okay, so exercise 3. This is probably a bit more interesting, and you want to actually understand this particular exercise. So let's see the output, and basically we are displaying the same value depending on the time zone. So I'm using UTC time zone, and hour of the day is 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm actually using, in this case, is Phoenix, Phoenix time zone is 10, and here is New York time is 12. Okay, and and then this value is the same, and we'll see why we are actually receiving this result. Okay, so we'll come back this one again. So what we have done here is we created calendar object. Okay, and this calendar object should be the same. Because we are just getting the same calendar object. Okay. Now we are setting. We are now we create the data object, and then we pass the data object to set the time. So now calendar C1, C2, C3, they have set with the time. Okay, and up to this point, I mean, they are in fact representing same time, right? Now the next is actually important. Now we are going to set the time zone. So as I said before, calendar object, for that matter calendar class, is time zone aware. So you can set the time zone by calling set time zone on the calendar object. So first calendar object, we set the time with UTC. Second calendar object, we set the time zone with America Phoenix. And third calendar object, we are setting with the America New York, the time zone. Okay. Now when we display hour of the day, now they are in fact the same instance in time, but we're representing in different value. Okay, so this is the time, the hour from the UTC time zone standpoint, and this is Phoenix, the time zone standpoint, and this is New York. Okay, does this make sense? Okay, all right. Okay, so we just make sure the hour of the day from the C1 and C2 are not the same. Okay, now we are going to convert this calendar object to the date object again. Okay, now they should return the exactly same long value, right? So that's the reason when you display 3 of this, they should have the same value basically. Okay, so again we are using toString method. That's the reason it's going to create a calendar object underneath, and it's going to use a default time zone and default locale. So default time zone is actually, I'm based on Boston, so it's using EST, Eastern Time, and I'm using English as a locale, so it's going to display it in the form of the US English. Anybody has a question on this exercise? So I would say in this hands-on lab, probably this particular exercise is probably the most important. Okay, all right, so let's move on. Date format and simple date format. Simple date format is a subclass of date format. Okay, so a date format is an abstract class for date and time formatting. The simple date format is concrete class of date format, and it is locale sensitive. It is local. It can provide the locale sensitive format. Okay, so let's see. So the first exercise we are just displaying, and this is now locale sensitive. Okay, so this is displaying things in the locale insensitive, locale independent manner. So we're basically using date format. Now the next one is we're using simple data format. Now it's displaying the same information now based on locale. So this is a locale based. In this case, US English. So if you're running this application on your system, and if you're not using US as a locale, then it will display in your own language. Okay, so basically the only difference is I'm using simple date format rather than date format. Okay. All right, so that's it. Properties class is again pretty much what we have seen. So we created properties object, again using new keyword, and then we are so again, properties class is kind of map class, meaning it is a set of key value pair. So we are adding entry. One entry is this is a key, this is a value, this is a key, and this is a value, this is a key and value. So we have 4 entries in this properties object. Okay. So now when you call key set, it will return a set of keys. So if you call the value set, it will return only the values. Okay. So here I got the countries, which is a set, that set of the keys. So meaning these four: USA, Korea, France, and Japan. Those are the keys. So these countries at this point will have these four entries: the countries USA, Korea, France, and Japan. Okay. And then we create iterator class. Okay, so it's like a for loop thing. Okay, and you can call the get has next, meaning whether it has the available item, and then you can extract that one from the iterator, and then you are going to get property based on key. So you provide a key which is from this country set, and if this str object is, let's say, France, it will return Paris. So I'm just displaying the capital of something is Paris. Okay, and you can also actually call get property method, and if it is not found, and this is what you want to display. Okay, so we don't have China's capital in this my country properties, so that's why it will display the capital of China is not found. Okay, and this is the result. Okay, so today's topics are relatively straightforward and nothing really complicated. So let's see. Let me just make sure I did this time F10.